I was born in Bellflower, California, Los Angeles area. I live on my own. I cook, I do my own laundry, I do my own shopping. I'm completely independent. I was born with a neurological disability called spina bifida, myelomeniingocele, and that's a certain kind of spina bifida. Basically what it is there was a hole in a certain part of my spine, and mine happens to be just slightly above my tailbone. In that area, it was about the size of a silver dollar. The nerves were damaged there. In fact, the whole spine with the nerves were exposed to the air. And so anything that was controlled by the nerves in that area was affected. And in my case, it was my lower extremities, my legs.
We had no idea before he was born what spina bifida was. We were only told after he was born, at the moment he was born, that he had some very big issues.
After they cut the cord and they took him for his cleansing, it was then that they discovered, when they rolled him over, that he had this quarter, about the size of a quarter. It looked like a sore on his back. And then they immediately contacted the doctor to return, and that's when he looked, and then they after a few moments, they came and they broke the news to us that Nathan had spina bifida.
My case is considered severe because I am in the chair and I don't walk. In fact, there are many, many people in the world who have a mild form of it, and they're up and they're walking around, and some of them aren't even aware that they have it. I also had a condition called hydrocephalus, and what that is you have spinal fluid, and normally spinal fluid is just drained through your spinal column, but it wasn't draining out of my head back into my spine. So what they had to do is they had to insert a shunt, which is just a device that forces that fluid out. So the ventricles on both sides of my brain were enlarged because of that fluid buildup.
We went to doctors and we went to therapy 3 and 4 days a week, and we had to do medical things for Nathan, special bathrooming, that sort of thing, to try and figure out what he could do and what he couldn't do.
You're very cognizant of the time, because he doesn't just do his normal business. You actually have, catheterization and things of that nature. So there's a lot of challenges in that area. But his mobility has always been to where he would be on the ground and he'd have to use his arms to maneuver.
Nathan would crawl around on the floor. He could not crawl like a normal baby. He would combat crawl, kind of like the soldiers do, and with his elbows. And he would get frustrated if he was on a bed. He felt fear, frustration, as did I. But I would make him come to me a lot of times instead of going and picking him up. Nathan was such a happy little boy, and he was very healthy. And it almost seemed at times that it was just very natural to just have that, because I didn't know otherwise. Because Nathan was not as mobile as most children, he was a thinker, and he asked lots of questions. He was very cerebral. He was very smart. My favorite story is when he was about 3 years old, and we were in the car, and he was going to be a fireman. He said, "I want to be a fireman, Mama," like so many little boys did. He said, "But I've been thinking about it, Mom. How am I ever going to get my wheelchair on the fire truck and off that fire truck and get the hose down?" And he was thinking about how was he going to be able to do that. And that was one of those times and those questions that I thought, oh, please let me be able to answer this wisely. And I told him, "You know what, Nathan, I'm sure that you'll figure it out." And we kept driving along in the car. We were going to a doctor's appointment that day. And he, a few minutes later, he said, Mom, I've got it figured out. I know exactly. And I said, "You know what exactly?" And he says, "I know how I can be a fireman." I said, "How?" He said, "I'm going to be a captain, and I'm going to tell him what to do." And I knew. That was one of those times, those parent times, where you know that anybody can do anything. And he knew, because I always told him he could do and be anything he wanted. And he had figured it out.
He grew up strong, and he had a strong-willed mom too, so she taught him to be independent, and he's been that way his whole life.
From the time I was born up until I was about 6 years old, the hope, at least with my parents and the doctors, was that I would eventually walk. I was 3 years old when I was put in the wheelchair, and before that my parents would carry me around anywhere we went. But then there came that point where I needed to be mobile on my own.
We were trying to look for different opportunities for his long-term mobility, so he had surgery on his knees, he had surgery on his ankle cords.
At 6 years old, they fitted me with some braces, and those braces would go up chest high, and they would allow me to walk with either crutches or a walker.
We put him in leg braces, and just to see him go 5 feet, I mean, we'd go over grandpas and grandmas to show them how he would be able to, be standing up and to go 5 feet. But it's almost like worried he's going to have a heart attack. It was very difficult for him.
Nathan hated it. He had a little wheelchair, and he knew that he could get around quicker in a wheelchair.
It was very frustrating, and I would cry, and I didn't want to do it because it was tough, it was scary, and it was something very new to me.
He decided that it was going to be easier for him to use a chair, to get around. So that decision was made early on, and then he's been in a chair ever since.
Nathan was 3 years old when I had Tyann, and she was a wonderful, wonderful blessing. She loved her brother, and Nathan loved Tyann, and he was so thrilled to have a little sister and a sibling to play with.
She was born without any problems, and I loved her very much. We always got along really well.
He wasn't where he would demand attention. He required attention. And as parents, we had to do that. Well, at the same time, we had Tyann, a daughter. So although it wasn't where we were playing favorites, it was a necessity. Nathan required medical attention. He required special attention at home, because of his health condition. On top of that, Nathan's mom and I split.
My parents were starting to have some marital issues, and it didn't have anything to do with me. It was just they didn't get along. Initially, I thought, of course, as a child, disabled or not, you think, what am I doing to cause the demise of my parents' relationship, of my parents' marriage? And they both emphasized to me, it's not you, it's not your sister. It's just we can't work some things out.
As a result of divorce, which happens usually, and the children go and they live with the mother the majority of the time, I was willing to take that on, and take Nathan to school every day and Tyann to school every day and pick them up every day and work full time. And yeah, it was hard. Sometimes I can look back and wonder how I did it, but sometimes when you're in that place and you know that you just need to do what you need to do, then that's what you do.
My mom was the only parent in the situation, so I couldn't be left with anyone else. So I had to go with my brother to all the doctor appointments, physical therapy appointments. So that was most of my upbringing, was being in that situation. And so I didn't really get a childhood like other little kids, where my mom was so focused on Nathan and doing these things for him and trying to make him feel as normal as possible.
She deserved to have attention also. And she still is extremely talented and beautiful, yes, physically and intellectually, and has a heart of gold, but it was really hard on her. But she went to everything with Nathan. She went to therapy with Nathan. She went to the doctors with us.
I remember specific situations where I would maybe fall and be maybe a little overly dramatic just to get my mom's attention. And I think that she knew that I was doing it, but she would still comfort me because I'm guessing she knew I was longing for that kind of attention because it was mostly focused on him.
The day that she realized that Mommy wasn't waiting on Nathan and getting him everything he wanted all the time.
He asked me to go upstairs and get something for him. And I guess I was just fed up. And I just said, you know what, you go do it yourself. You go get it yourself. Because he did ask me many times to go do things for him.
She stopped waiting on him, even though that was just so natural for her to do and to caretake for him. And I would tell her, no, you don't want to do that, for your brother. And in school, when they would, the kids at school always wanted to do for Nathan because, they wanted to help him. And I would go in every year in grade school and talk to the class and tell them that it's fun to push the wheelchair, but it's most important for him that they don't do that so that he can get himself around there. And, once in a while was okay, but it was important for Nathan to learn that he needed to do those things himself.
Everybody in the school knew Nathan, the kid in the chair who's in my class. And it was a good time. We had good times on the playground. I had a lot of friends from that point on. From that point until, through 6th grade, essentially.
He was able to figure it out, and that I'm very proud of, that he didn't give up. He would get frustrated. He had days that were, very hard on him and hard on us as a family, because it wasn't just him that had the disability. We all had the disability, and we all had to adapt as a family to it.
It makes it even more incredible that he overcame the environment. He overcame that. He stood strong and he made it through successfully. He loved basketball. We used to watch basketball together, and that was his sport.
I've been playing since I was 3 years old. That started out with my dad.
I bought a hoop that had a suction cup, and you attach it to a door. And then I would get on the ground with him, and it was a little Nerf ball, and we would play basketball against the door in the hallway. And we would play and we'd wrestle and stuff like that. So he had a ball. So maybe it was then that he first, loved basketball.
I wanted to be involved. During games, during practices, I would see things that our head coach wouldn't even see, and that maybe I would be a pretty good coach. So that drove me to try out the coaching thing. One
day, this one person, and I don't recall his name, but this one person gave him an opportunity to coach. So Nathan was so excited that he had an opportunity to coach.
Nathan came when I think he was in high school at the time, and I didn't know him any different than any other applicant. I just see his name on paper. We scheduled him for an interview, and he came in and Nathan, as we know, is in a wheelchair, and it kind of caught me by surprise. And right away, I think human nature, my thought is, okay, this kid's interviewing, but is he going to be able to coach?
I told the guy who hired me, Mike, I said, Mike, if you just give me a chance, give me some older kids who have a basic knowledge of the game, I'll see what I can do. So he did. He gave me that chance.
He loved the game. He knew the game. I could tell by our interview, he understood the game. And so as the interview went, I thought, you know what, this is going to be a great opportunity for him. Here's somebody that really wants to do this.
I organized practices. We didn't go out there and play horse. We didn't play around the world. We had true practices. And this was from all the knowledge and experience I gained through reading and just watching the game, studying the game my entire life up to this point.
Even though I was still, okay, if I give him a job, kids that he will be coaching can be mean. And will they accept, okay, here's our coach, and a kid comes out in a wheelchair, are they going to accept somebody that has a disability?
Great, we have this guy in a wheelchair. God, I hope we win. I hope we win one. And on my part, I was thinking, God, please let me win one game. Let me win one. I'll be happy.
And I thought, you know what, this kid is, obviously, he's been through a lot. He'll deal with that.
I treated this team like I was coaching a Division I college team or an NBA team. I had note cards on what I was going to do every minute of every practice, every day. And I followed that.
Early on, his team was the Lakers, Showtime, and the coach was Pat Riley. So I guess he learned his coaching from Pat Riley because, boy, when he was coaching these young kids, he was little Pat Riley out there. He was serious.
In sports, you need a drive. You always hear the things, don't give up, you can do anything you set your mind to, etc. And this all went through my mind that, hey, this might be a great example for kids and parents that, no matter what your uphill battle is, if you want to do something, work at it.
So I tried to manage his expectation, and I said, Nathan, what we got to do is, focus on that. How many games do you have? I think he said 6 or 8. And I said, well, focus on that first win. Get the monkey off your back. And he'd call me and he'd say, Dad, I got the first win. I said, great. So wow, that's great. The taste of victory, right? And the excitement for the kids.
And we won our second one. And then we won our third one. And then we won our fourth one.
And he went through the season undefeated. And I was, wow, that's exciting. So I finally had an opportunity to come up, and I saw his team, and I saw him on the sidelines. And then I saw, it was during the playoff run or the championships, all done in one day. And he had like 2 or 3 games in that one day. And I saw the other teams, and they were bigger, they were stronger. And I said, oh boy, let's test his coaching skills. And he won the first game, and then he went into the championship game on that Saturday.
We were tied with, 3-4 minutes left to go. And I could just feel the pressure, and I can just feel just the sweat just starting to build up. And I thought, oh, here we are. We've come this far. I'm not losing. We're not losing this game.
And he coached them to victory. And I was sitting there, I was so overwhelmed with pride to see him out there.
I didn't even know how to react. All the kids were jumping in the air and excited, and I just breathed deeply, and I just thought, wow, we did something incredible.
I was really happy that Nathan had an opportunity to experience that. I didn't want him to miss that, because that's something a guy, when you're growing up, that you got to be nervous, you got to be sick in your stomach, you got to have that competitiveness and that opportunity to compete, and he did. As a coach, he did have that chance.
I think winning that championship, for me personally, I think every one of the guys on the team, I think they had their own feelings about it, but for me personally, it was bigger than winning a recreational league basketball championship. For me, it was proof to myself that I didn't need these legs. I didn't need these legs to do it. If I can do those things, why not? Why don't I just keep going, see what else is out there for me? The next step of my life, I would go to college. And my parents from a very young age instilled that in me. The thing you do, this is basically how they said, the thing you do after high school is you go to college. I entered college in the fall of 2001. I heard about this professor, Dr. Chuck Wall, professor of communications. And what I heard was very special about him was not only was he the best, but that he was also blind.
Here was a kid coming in a wheelchair, just like all the other kids coming into the classroom, eager to get started, apprehensive about what this class is going to be about. And I think in Nathan's situation, a certain amount of concern as to whether or not his wheelchair was going to be seen as who he is, rather than looking at him and saying there's a talented young man who just happens to be in a wheelchair.
I used to sit in Dr. Wall's office for hours, an hour or two, almost every day that we did class. I did class with him 2-3 times a week.
Being independent and having his own car and be able to come to college, but get that wheelchair out of the car and get it to the point where he could get the class on time was an issue. And for Nathan, it was a critical issue, and it was rather frustrating getting that all arranged, but it was one of those transitional problems that once he figured it out, it wasn't going to be a problem anymore. Nathan would often, after class, roll down to my office, and we would visit between classes, and it was just a casual relationship, which was really kind of fun for both of us to just sit down and talk to somebody who's experiencing some of the same problems because we're both classified as having a disability.
If I really wanted to be like Dr. Wall and be influential, to be a teacher, to be a master, I first needed to be a good student.
He's a young man who wasn't lost at sea. He had a pretty good notion of what he wanted to do. He had to refine it down to something that he felt comfortable doing. People like Nathan, who are out openly involved in society and making a difference like he is, he's really proving, just ignore the chair I'm in and take a look at what I can do.
We thought that we had really climbed the mountain, getting to the point where he could do anything that he wanted, until that awful, devastating time that he was diagnosed with the kidney failure.
Well, I had been in college for some time, and things were progressing pretty well. I knew the direction that I wanted my life to go. I had aspirations to coach at the Division I level, basketball, or possibly in the NBA.
One day he went in for some examination, and he went home, and he received a call, and they had informed him that to return immediately because he was in renal failure.
Didn't know what that meant, so I asked her, what do you mean? And she says, your kidneys are failing, and you need to get to the emergency room right now, today.
You never really think that after going through hard times like those, that you would end up having another big blow, and we did.
I came up to Bakersfield, and I picked him up, took him down to Los Angeles, where he received treatment.
He probably wasn't even here an hour. Picked me up, and we drove, just him and I, back to LA. Took me back to the same doctors, and we called him on the way, and we told him the situation. They said, bring him in right now. We will have a bed waiting for him in the hospital.
He received treatment to prepare him so he could receive dialysis. So from that point, he was on dialysis 3 days a week for 3 hours a day, and that took a toll on him.
He would drive himself to dialysis 3 times a week and wouldn't even want me to help him. I would ask him, even on hard days, call me. My job was to where I was in marketing, and I was out in the community, and I was able to go and pick him up, but he didn't want me to. He wanted to do it. So he took the baton, and he proved, not only to me, but to himself and to his father that he could do this.
At this time, I was still going to school full time. So it was really difficult to handle.
It zaps all his energy and, just the process itself. So he needs a day to recover, and then he has to go to dialysis again. But that day that he's recovering, he has school. And then after school he has study, and then the next day he has dialysis, and when he goes home he still has study. So he tried that for a while, and he was doing the best that he could, but he was determined he wasn't going to quit. This wasn't going to beat him.
To see anyone go through pain like that and not being able to help and making it better was just heart-wrenching, and it, in some cases made me angry because I couldn't do anything about it. To watch my brother be sick every day, not being able to go to school, go do just daily activities, and watching my mom at the same time watch her son die. And there was nothing I could do about it. Even me donating my kidney wasn't even an option.
We knew after doing a lot of research that Michael or I could give a kidney to Nathan.
I was asked, and without hesitation, of course, wanted to donate my kidney, to him. And then we went through it was a process of several months to prepare myself.
My dad stepped up, and we always knew he was going to be the donor. It was just a matter of blood type matching, compatibility. But we did some tests, we did some IV therapies, and we were able to successfully do the transplant on March 24th, 2009.
That allowed him to, stop his dialysis, and now he's been on with the new kidney. It's been very successful, and he takes very good care of it, and he goes in for regular examinations to ensure that the kidney is functioning properly.
As soon as they hooked that kidney up, it went completely pink, full of blood, and immediately started working. It was the biggest gift and the most wonderful thing he could do.
Ever since then, I've been on medication, which I will be for the rest of my life. But in fact, I am on less medication than a few people I know whom had compatible transplants, meaning the blood type matched. My situation was a little bit different, but I'm on less medication, which is even better for me.
He healed from the kidney. He went back to school, and I was so proud that he could have just said, "This is just too much," and he didn't. And he was determined. However long it took him, he was going to complete it. So he returned to school. And then I got a call, and he says, "Dad, I want to invite you to my graduation."
I finished just a few classes that I had to finish my degree in business administration, sports management. Graduated, finally. And from there, I started a job working with a physical therapy, physical fitness place in town.
Thinking of him just graduating, it wasn't just the whole graduating school. It was him getting all the way from being diagnosed with kidney failure, going through that struggle, going through dialysis, and having to deal with all the surgeries and all the misfortune. And then getting to that point, it just kind of felt like, wow, such a relief that this was what he was working towards, and that was his goal, and he finally reached his goal. He finds ways to do everything, going grocery shopping. He'll shop a little here and there just so it's not such a bulk where he would need help. So for the most part, he takes care of everything on his own.
I'm hoping I can help other people by showing them what I've gone through, and it's very possible that despite these challenges, they can overcome theirs too.
We've been to where you go into hospitals and you see people in beds, and someday you go through and that bed's empty. They didn't make it. I mean, when you see some of this stuff, you appreciate life in its simplest form.
It is not easy to have a disability. and be treated as if you don't. We still do a lot of filtering in our country. We still often look at the disability before we look at the individual.
I have all that history. I see where he came from the time he was born, all the challenges that he has that you and I take for granted. Preparing a meal, getting a glass of water, driving, and he's overcome that.
Nathan has been such an inspiration to us.
Just his determination to not let his disability get him down, and that I'm going to continue to be normal, live a normal life, and I'm going to do things that are going to impact people.
There are not a lot of people out there in chairs and who have disabilities but are motivational. That's almost the opposite of what you would think. Wait a minute, how can this guy be motivating us? Aren't we supposed to be motivating him? No, because he knows exactly what he needs out of his life, and he's here to show you what you can get out of your life as well. Nathan's going to be a motivator for a lot of people. He's going to step forward and show them what they can do while he is demonstrating what he's done.
When I think I'm starting to get angry or disappointed or depressed or things like that, I draw upon Nathan. And again, understanding what he's gone through and what he continues to go through day in and day out, having the same challenges that I have. And in addition to that, having his own unique challenges. I reflect back and I say, what do I have to complain about?
He will be an inspiration for so many, and maybe that is what he's supposed to be doing, going through all of these things and then being able to tell people, like we told him, you can do anything, you can be anything that you want to be, but you have to make that decision. And he did. He made the decision.